Before I ask the other members of the committee to introduce themselves, may I just indicate for the record that member Critchlow Coburn has asked to be excused. I will now ask the other committee members to please introduce themselves.
Good morning, Adrian Leons, member.
Good morning, General Antoine, member.
Good morning, Wade Mark, member.
Morning, Fazil Karim, member.
Good morning and welcome, Garvin Simonet, member.
Vice Chairman Henry, I understand, is on his way and he'll be joining us as we proceed. Now, may I ask members of TSTT and those from the ministries to also introduce themselves.
Robert Mayers, Chairman.
Ronald Walcott, CEO.
Gail Alex Solomon, Chief Legal Counsel and Corporate Secretary.
Gerald Cooper, CFO.
Keno Cox, Chief Procurement Officer.
Carol David, General Manager, Traditional Services.
Charles Carter, Consultant.
Thank you. I understand we have officials from the National Enterprises Limited as well, NEL.
Ingrid Lashley, Chairman, NEL.
Bernard Shepherd, Legal Advisor, NEL.
Thank you. And we have ministry officials from the Ministry of Public Utilities and the Ministry of Finance.
Good morning, Chairman, members. I am Nicolette Duke, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Public Utilities.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Lutchman, Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, Deputy Permanent Secretary.
Good morning. My name is Eben Bob. I'm the Acting Director, Social and Economic Transformation, Ministry of Finance, Investment Division.
Good morning, Chair, members. I'm Beverly Khan, Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Public Utilities.
Thank you. And before we start the official proceedings, just again, some other housekeeping matters. I'd be grateful if everyone can either turn off your cell phones or put them on silent. And as you have been doing, turn on the microphone before you speak and turn it off after you speak. Time is limited. We have to conclude by 12:30, and I think there's a fair amount we would like to cover. So I'm going to ask participants to keep questions brief and focused so that we can maximize the amount of questions. Now, the purpose of this inquiry is to conduct a single evidence session of the recent business operations of TSTT, including reports about the company's procurement practices, as well as reports of a restructuring exercise being undertaken by the company. I am aware that in recent correspondence, TSTT did indicate that some matters may be of a legally sensitive or commercially sensitive nature. And you may not be at liberty to disclose or to speak about those matters in a public forum. So may I just assure you from the outset, if there is anything you feel that falls within that purview, please indicate it to us. We are quite happy to deal with it in camera or to ask that the information be provided by written correspondence. Okay? Our purpose here is not to try and torpedo TSTT's operations, but the opposite. Our role and function is to try and improve your performance, to try and help you assuage the public of any concerns, to be transparent, right? Our role is about improving TSTT's performance and operations resulting in a more efficient and effective organization. Okay, so this meeting is being broadcast live on Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, and on the YouTube channel ParlView. Viewers and listeners can participate by sending comments relating to today's engagement with TSTT via email to parl101@ttparliament.org, on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ttparliament, or on Twitter @ttparliament. May I now invite TSTT to make brief opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Unfortunately, as you know, I called you when we requested an extension of the notice, and you did indicate that we were going to deal specifically with matters related to procurement and to the industrial relations, climate, and other matters, your words, which recently appeared in the media. So in that regard, on Wednesday, we forwarded to members of the committee the bundle of documents which you have relating to our procurement practices. Our grave concern really remains at the lack of advance notice of the questions that the committee may wish to pursue, particularly around the imprecise subject of matters recently appearing in the media. We have noted that the hearing is single evidence session, and we have been given no indication of what evidence is to be taken. I presume that that will unfold as we go forward. Respectfully, at a minimum, we cannot be expected to respond in an off-the-cuff manner. That is to say, without an opportunity to have a reasonable time to consider what is being asked by the committee and to respond in as much detail as may be necessary, submitting supporting documentation as you may deem appropriate. In keeping with what I consider to be our right to be treated fairly, the committee should note that we may be forced to insist that we cannot answer some questions on matters which require careful consideration and response. Nevertheless, within the constraints placed upon us by the lack of particularity, I am grateful for the opportunity to address the committee. And I want to first declare our optimism to this committee and the general public regarding TSTT's future sustainability, profitability, and enhanced service offerings. We wish to frontally address issues surrounding TSTT's procurement policies, practices, and procedures, and to dispel any lingering concerns regarding the recent rationalization of TSTT's headcount. And three, we wish to highlight certain threats to TSTT's continued viability and to explore possible solutions to these challenges. We see this committee as an ideal forum in which we can achieve these objectives, since both the members of this committee and TSTT's board of directors share common interests. You will agree with me, Chairman, that we both want to ensure the sustainability and profitability of the company so that it is a benefit and never a burden on taxpayers. We both want to ensure that there is proper stewardship of the company, which involves propriety in all commercial dealings, compliance with all laws and regulations, and the making of prudent commercial decisions to ensure that the company's business model is aligned with best industry practices. And three, we want to identify any potential threats to TSTT's continued viability going forward so that they may be addressed with some haste. I assure you, Chairman, that the optimism I expressed in TSTT's future is well reposed. It is based on the following strengths: an enhanced telecommunications network, a leaner and more efficient workforce, and a business model that takes into account the rapidly changing technological environment in which we must operate, and by extension, the increasing demands for up-to-date solutions by our customers. The mission, as identified in our strategic plan 2016 to 2021, is to transition from the TSTT we know to a TSTT that is an agile broadband communications company, which our more discerning public demands. Business as usual was not an option in the face of declining traditional revenue streams resulting from the mass usage of over-the-top solutions such as WhatsApp, and Skype, etc. In this regard, our strategic plan revolved around 4 pillars, namely evolve and upgrade technology, seek alternative revenue streams, customer service improvements, and organizational transformation. Whilst these pillars may be self-explanatory, they each involve a number of steps in order to be realized. TSTT has spent $1.2 billion on the evolve upgrade phase to replace its outdated end-of-life legacy network. Almost 95% of this phase was completed by 2018, so that the next step was the rationalization of the headcount. This undertaking was based on the recommendation of independent experts who examined our employment metrics. The analysis revealed what we knew for years. 1, TSTT's wage bill expressed as a percentage of its revenue was over 30%, whereas the industry benchmark was 15%. 2, the revenue generated per employee was $177,000 US, whereas the industry benchmark was $400,000 US. And 3, junior and senior staff remuneration levels were in excess of industry benchmarks, according to information obtained from HRC Associates. Employees in these bargaining units were paid between 59% and 199% above industry norms. In fact, compensation for junior and senior staff employees accounted for 82.3% of the company's $768 million annual wage bill, and the settlement of back pay to junior and senior staff employees cost the company approximately $800 million. The company embarked on the rationalization exercise in a manner that was compliant with the prevailing legislation for the retrenchment of workers without any breaches of the provisions contained in the collective agreement. As a result, each separated employee has received their settlement package, with the exception of 34 persons who are presently awaiting clearance from the Board of Inland Revenue. We now have a restructured organization designed into 4 clear lines of business with end-to-end responsibility for accountability and profitability. Having dealt with the matter concerning industrial relations, I now address the other matter identified by the committee as the pertinent to this hearing, namely the procurement practices. Since joining the board of TSTT in November 2017, I can say without fear of contradiction that TSTT has a robust policy for obtaining goods and services. The company adheres fully to the suite of corporate documents by which the organization is governed, which include the unanimous shareholders agreement, the bylaws, the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual, and TSTT's own board-approved tendering policy and procedure. The board, through its tenders subcommittee, insists on procedural rectitude at each step of every vendor or service provider engagement process. And as earlier indicated, we have provided the committee with the policy and procedure manuals covering same. As far as I'm aware, there are no issues relating to breaches of the company's procurement practices arising during my tenure on the board. There were a number of allegations arising prior to my appointment to the board. These were investigated and adjudicated upon, and members of the current management were all subsequently cleared. However, out of an abundance of caution and as an added check and balance of our procurement practices, the board requested a review and reassessment of these matters by an independent international accounting firm. We are still awaiting a final report, and until then, I will reserve all further reference to those matters. I now wish, are we in camera or are we?
No, we're not.
We're not, okay. Is there something that I can raise in camera? Just 2 minutes?
We will do so at the end. So what I would ask you is to put that to one side, and we will deal with the in-camera session later.
That wouldn't help you too much, but okay, thank you, sir.
And before opening the floor for questions, let me just reassure you again, these are not gladiatorial or adversarial proceedings. This is an inquiry. Our purpose is about accountability and transparency. We are very interested in hearing about what you said, that TSTT is a benefit, not a burden, about your stewardship, and about your prudent commercial decisions. So I would like to really invite you to use this as an opportunity to share your challenges, your views, your disappointments, your achievements, to voice concerns and to make recommendations. This is a unique opportunity to increase public awareness, understanding, and support in respect of your operations. And having said that, I now open the floor. Member Mark, you had some questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And good morning once again. Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Robert Miles. I know that TSTT has had a very difficult period in the recent past. And as you have indicated, decisions on restructuring and staff rationalization were undertaken. I know that from the information that we have from TSTT, that the savings that are supposed to emerge from the restructuring and rationalization would be in the vicinity of some $270 million annually. Would you, first of all, we read a lot of things in the newspapers, but we want to get it from TSTT directly. Can you provide this committee with a complete breakdown of the number of employees, both at the managerial level and at the staff level, who would have been severed, retrenched, divorced from the company in its recent rationalization of staff? Can we have an appreciation of that number?
I can ask Carol to just respond. She has all the numbers here. Carol?
Good morning.
For the junior and senior staff, meaning the persons who are covered by the collective agreement, 500 persons were separated. For the managerial staff, which includes executives, senior managers, managers and exempt staff, a total of 50. We also closed off on some existing contracts, which sat in the region of 46 persons. And part of this separation, it included a settlement, a court settlement, which included the balance of persons who were separated, taking that up to 709 persons being separated.
So the final total that we can put on record involving separation as a result of the rationalization stands at 709 persons.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Can you indicate what, or put it another way, the $270 million that are supposed to be realized as savings on an annual basis, Can you share with this committee, Mr. Chairman, when will this kick in? When would you begin to realize this savings of $270 million?
We should see it kicking in from this fiscal year, which began April. Our fiscal year ends March 31st. So fiscal year 2019-2020.
Have you been able to properly assess the effect that the severing of those workers will probably have on your future operations? Have that work been thoroughly done? In fact, I think you made mention of some independent experts who advised TSTT on this staff rationalization exercise. You want to share with this committee who these experts were? And can we have access to copies of their reports?
The experts were Messrs. PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I see no reason why we cannot provide you with copies of that report. So I will take a note.
You said that all visa payments have been honored thus far, with the exception of, no, not visa, all persons who have been severed from the company, their payments have been honored, with the exception of a few whose cases are currently before the Board of Inland Revenue.
34, yes.
34. Do you have any idea when those matters would be completed, or that is completely outside of your control?
Sorry, sir, that is out of my, that is with the Board of Inland Revenue.
We also understand that there is a salary freeze, particularly during the period 2014 to 2018. I may be incorrect or may be wrong. You will have to advise us. Is there, or could you indicate to this committee whether there were any salary and or wage increases for the period 2014 to 2018? That's the first thing. And whether you anticipate any increases in the period 2019 to maybe 2021. Could you share with this committee?
I'll ask Ms. David to respond.
The period that I believe you're referencing is January 1st, 2014 to December 31st, 2016. I just want to outline that at TSTT, we have one majority union and two associations. So for two associations, we have completed negotiations. It was not a wage freeze, it was a negotiation, and we came up with a settled position. For CWU, we are still in the process of negotiating an outcome for the agreement 2014 to 2016. The other periods, we still have to do negotiations, and I don't want to sit in a position where I'm making projections around where it will come out. So for sure we know that two of the associations, we have completed negotiations, and we are still in the process of completing the negotiations for the CWU.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Myers. Mr. Myers, could you tell us the benchmark that TSTT is trying to arrive at for employee costs as it relates to your revenue base? With the recent retrenchment and rationalization, can you tell us what is the current benchmark for employee costs as it relates to your overall revenue base? what is it now and what is being projected in, let's say, by the end of 2019?
I'll ask Dr. Walcott to respond to that.
Thank you. First of all, Chairman and members, I think just to go back a little bit in terms of the context of the approach that we did, member, with regards to our rationalization. As the chairman had indicated, this was part of a strategic plan. It was a 5-year strategic plan that we designed around the 4 pillars, which included organizational transformation. Our determination in the plan was to operate the business along industry standards. As we indicated, the industry benchmark is 15% of your employee costs as a percentage of revenue. Right now, we are at just around 20% with the recent rationalization. We expect to get to 17% as we continue with our strategic plan. But right now, we'll be at 20%.
At 20?
Yes.
But the benchmark is 15?
Correct.
And when you anticipate to realize that benchmark?
We expect to get there, member, by 2021, which is part of the 5-year strategic plan.
May I also ask through the chairman whether...
Just not crossing you, but also inside of there, remember, we expect our revenues to increase as well. Okay.
Yeah. May I ask, Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Myers or the CEO, do you at this point in time, even in the wake of the rationalization of staff, do you have at this time an arrangement with any external sources that supplies labor to the company? Can you share with this committee whether you have at this point in time, in the face of the severing of those 709 workers, any external agency that is supplying labor at a professional level, at a middle level management, at a middle management level to the company at this time?
I'll ask Ms. David to respond.
As part of our transformation effort, we developed clear processes and roles and responsibility to deliver on the organization's strategic plan. Part of that plan, we have not been using any external labor to provide any services to the organization. Part of the plan, as at the 31st of March, we were mandated to have no contract or fixed-term contract employees. So right now we do not have an organization or individuals providing labor.
Can you, Mr. Chairman, my final question, because I'll come back to some other areas later. Is there a company by the name of Gravitas that supply labor to the company, or have they been severed, or have they ever been a supplier of labor to the company in the wake of the severing of personnel at the company? Can you share with us whether that has any merit?
I'll ask the CFO to respond.
Hi, good morning, Chairman and members. Gravitas has been in an assisted operations contract arrangement with the organization that is due to expire at the end of May. It is generally around the AP and cash operations area. It's a fairly limited arrangement where they do assist with the online operations and the processing of invoices.
Member Leons.
Thank you, Chair. throughout the discussion so far, you have been making mention to your strat plan 2016-2021. I'm not sure if you would have sent that, and if you have, I apologize, but I haven't seen that document. You have also mentioned the plan for TSTT is for sustainability, profitability, and the viability of the company. What are some of the challenges that you are having in terms of achieving this strategy, this strat plan, executing the strat plan? The plan would have been 2016 to 2021. We are now in 2019. Where are we now with the strat plan in 2019? And are we where we had planned to be as of 2019? And just being very general, right? So we can give in relations to employment, cost of employment, in terms of technological advancements or plans, in terms of whatever form of restructuring, right? So I'll start off that being a general question, and we could go into a bit more detail. Thank you.
I'll ask Dr. Walcott to respond.
Thanks, Chairman. So just to summarize very quickly, our strat plan, as the Chairman indicated, was we developed one mandate for TSTT. We wanted to move away from being a 20th century traditional telecommunications service provider to becoming a 21st century agile broadband communications company. That was the mandate that we established. And to do so was a very comprehensive plan, but there were 4 pillars and 5 major programs. The 4 pillars were, we first of all had to upgrade our technology. This plan was always intended to be a $3.8 billion plan. It was a front-loaded plan. $1.2 billion was designed around the technology. And as the Chairman indicated, we have completed more than 95% of the technological upgrades, to mean that we now have the only fixed wireless access network in Trinidad and Tobago. We have a robust LTE mobile network. We have fiber in terms of home pass, more than 25% of Trinidad and Tobago, and all the associated components of that plan. So we have achieved what we set out to do from a technology perspective. One of the fundamental drivers of the plan was the fact that traditional revenues, because of over-the-top solutions such as WhatsApp and Skype and Facebook and so on, they now account for more than 80% of the world's communications and entertainment traffic. So that then had a direct result in our traditional revenue, so we had to look for new lines of revenue, which we've been doing, and we're in the process of doing that. In terms of the organizational transformation, we can say that we've completed the major part of that also, because whilst we talk about the rationalization of staff, and that is what's in the public domain, there is another element of the transformation from an organizational perspective, which had to do with the efficiency of the staff. So whilst cost was a challenge for us, and it was 30% of revenue, when the industry standard was 15%. But our revenue per employee was around $177 annually, and the industry benchmark was $400,000 US. What that says to us is that we were half as efficient as the industry we were. And so part of what we did is we recalibrated the entire organization. We dismantled the functional structure that we had, and that was always part of where we are. So from a general perspective, we are where we intended to be right now in 2019.
I heard you mention that you would have 95% completed your technology area. However, you also indicated that because of the growing environment with Skype and other areas, that you have to further look at some of the areas maybe for improvement.
Sorry, we have to look at other forms of revenue because the traditional revenue streams are all going south.
Right, so the question, sorry, no, not cutting you, sorry. So the question I'm asking is, with that $1.2 billion plan for technology, is it that now has to be revised for the current environment?
No. What I'm saying, remember, is that when we designed the plan, we understood. So we look at the plan from a position of why we had to do what we had to do, what is it that we had to do, and how we will go about doing it. That's how we structured the plan. The why is that in addition to, we had two fundamental issues. We had a scenario where we were set up as a traditional telecom for voice services, and the industry had metamorphosized into a data-driven industry. So if we were to be relevant and to remain relevant, we had to dismantle this traditional voice telecommunications service that we all know into this agile broadband communications company. So it was with that in mind that we set about the plan that we did. It wasn't that we are now faced with a scenario that we're addressing. We started addressing this 2.5 years ago. So that's the point I'm making. It is in keeping with our strategic plan.
All right, thank you. And just finally, the balance of the 3.8 billion plan, where are we with that? And is there the funding to execute?
Remember, that informs what I wanted to speak to this committee about in camera. I would prefer not to answer that.
Thank you. We will deal with that later.
No problem.
Member Karim.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to inquire with respect to an assessment center exercise that may have been conducted, or maybe you could elaborate on whether it was used prior to retrenchment. Who would have staffed or conducted that exercise through that assessment center? And were the scores of those who were assessed, were those scores impacted upon the retrenchment of officers? Has the exercise been completed?
Carol?
For the entire retrenchment exercise, we followed, in fact, we stuck closely to one, the collective agreement. And the collective agreement in itself dictates what is supposed to happen for junior and senior staff when you look at retrenching employees. So if you look at the bundle we sent, the collective agreement speaks to, in fact, what supports us is Article 3, Article 13, and Schedule 1. Schedule 1 says last in, first out, and we stuck to that. So throughout the organization, based on classification, last in, first out was determined. Now, our assessment center was conducted. That was not unique or specific to retrenchment. We were going through a transformation, and part of that process, we had to identify persons with the necessary skills to take us forward. Now, remember, an assessment center does not assess performance. That's not what we used it for. We looked at it as a means of assessing potential. Who in the organization had certain potential to move the organization in the direction we wanted to go. Now, the assessment center only looked at leadership and core competencies. It did not look at technical competencies for persons in the management category. So I want us to separate it. We had employees who belonged to the bargaining unit, and we had employees who are managerial staff. And this assessment center was only applied to those managerial staff.
If I get you correctly, what you are saying is that if I am an employee at the company, I am assessed for my future in terms of my potential and not my performance. Is that what I'm
You
trying
see,
to?
no, the question was about the assessment center.
Yes, the assessment
Your
center.
performance is assessed via our performance management system, which is detailed. It is a 360-degree assessment. We set KPIs at the beginning of the performance period. So because you specifically asked about the assessment center, that's why I did not address the performance management system.
So to what extent would you say, in your own opinion, you found that there was a great measure of success in terms of that assessment center in moving the organization forward and in coming to your final figure of what you want to maintain in the organization?
Our final figure, because I need to clear that, the final figure was arrived at through the jobs that were deemed redundant and whether or not we had positions in the organization that was comparable to a position an employee may be holding to place them in that job.
So can I ask you just at that point, in terms of that assessment, how many jobs did you find were redundant when you conducted that exercise?
The assessment center was not intended to identify redundancy.
Okay, but how many jobs did you find overall?
So we identified approximately 90 jobs that were redundant.
And those would have been at what level?
Those 90 jobs were at the managerial level.
High-paying performing people? I mean, you say redundant, does it mean that you found that they were duplicated?
No, that's not. Redundancy in this sense means that there were jobs in excess of requirement. Remember, we changed the business model. And the business model represented is either you're selling it, you're servicing it, or you're supporting it. That was the basis we used to identify redundancy. It was not a question. The assessment center did not identify redundancy.
Okay. Just as a follow-up, and since we're looking at policy decisions and so on, and you were talking about performance and assessment, I don't know if the Ministry of Finance would like to tell us whether you are in compliance fully and up to date with all your requirements that are submitted as a state enterprise.
Thank you, Member. NEL owns 51% of TSTT shares, and NEL Corporation Sole owns majority shares in NEL. And given that arrangement, TSTT is not required to comply fully with all the requirements of, let's say, a 100% owned company. The requirements that they are supposed to comply with, they have complied with.
One more before Has TSTT embarked on any risk assessment policy? Have you engaged in anyone with respect to a risk assessment exercise? And if so, could you give details of it?
We have brought in Messrs. Ernst & Young to conduct an enterprise-wide risk management assessment, and they are in the process of... It's completed. Okay. So we now have a risk manager working with them to implement.
Is that alongside an ISO certified project that you have embarked upon, a compliance project? Are you involved in that?
I'm not aware of any ISO certification. We'll have to get back to you on that. I don't have...
Okay, I'll come back to...
Okay.
Member Severance?
This question goes to either the chairman or the CEO. The chairman indicated in his opening statement that he was certainly optimistic of the future sustainability and success of TSTT. And he also indicated that there were challenges. Would you care to share with us the challenges that you see presented and how you propose to dispose of those challenges?
One of our major challenges is an issue that I would not want to discuss in the public domain.
I suspected, and again, those are things that
Yes.
we can deal with in camera.
Yeah.
Focusing therefore on the optimism, would you care to indicate the paths to be pursued that would deliver the sustainability that you have indicated, if that is not commercially sensitive at this stage?
Can I ask the CEO to comment on that?
Yes, when we crafted the plan, we indicated that there were 5 major programs that we had to pay particular attention to within the construct of the entire strategic imperatives that gave us the most probability of success. One was retail transformation. We had to ensure that we had an up-to-date, agile, customer-friendly customer touchpoint that was omnipresent. To mean, whether you contacted us via the internet, through a call center, you went into one of our retail stores, etc., you'll get the same excellent quality of service. So that was transformation number 1 in terms of retail transformation. Secondly, we said that we needed to improve our customer service and our service delivery. We were very clear that we had to make some significant improvements there, and those are items that we have been addressing. From a customer service perspective, for example, under the traditional banner of TSTT, there were some products, if customers requested them, could take as much as 30 days to be deployed. That was just because of the way in which we were structured. Now, with the new system that we've implemented, those customer requests can be fulfilled within 48 hours. So that is one of the things that we were working towards, and we've achieved some of those business support systems upgrade. The third is, if you're going to become a broadband telecom, a broadband communications company, then we had to have ubiquitous, reliable broadband that was able to provide the service assurance that our customers demand. So we approach that from a hybrid perspective to mean we are only going to deploy fiber, and fiber is about the best that you can get when it comes to broadband, and we will deploy both on our mobile side and our wireless side, LTE, which is the best that's available globally from a broadband technological perspective. So, and those deployments have been completed. Then we said that we needed to focus on organizational transformation, and the key with the organizational transformation for us, Carla indicated, is not just about the rationalization, but about restructuring the entire organization. One of the challenges that we had as a traditional telecoms, that we were set up in a functional manner. And that's normal in the industry. You know, you had these discrete functions. We dismantled them and created these autonomous units that's responsible for end-to-end customer support. So in the past, where you would get a customer complaint in one area, and you'd pass it to another area, and then you'd pass it to another area, what we refer to as strap and pass, that no longer exists in this new model that we have deployed. So we've put in place the major programs, and we've made significant progress on all of them, which is what gives us the confidence that we have the mechanism in place to move forward.
We're not there yet.
In relation to broadening your customer base, have you strategies developed for example, penetration of rural areas?
Dr. Wakatu.
In terms of broadening our customer base, we've looked at it from various perspectives. One of which is because we are providing cloud-based solutions, we do have one of the best data centers developed in the region. We are no longer constrained to the geographic boundaries of Trinidad and Tobago. So one of the ways that we are increasing our customer base is we are actually exploring opportunities in the region. And we can talk more about that, but we have made progress there already. We can provide, for example, disaster recovery solutions to some of our neighbors. We've been in those discussions. Unfortunately, some of our Caribbean neighbors are within unstable geological or within the hurricane path. So we have proposed that we can provide software as a service, backup as a service, disaster recovery. So those are some of the areas that we've been looking at. In terms of the rural areas, we have a massive penetration, particularly on our fixed wireless access network, which I want to repeat, we're the only provider that has a network like that. It's a residential mobile network, wireless network, sorry, and it's upgradable to 5G. And we'll be coming back with more information on 5G later on. But we have deployed the network, and we have the ability now to work our solutions in rural Trinidad and Tobago also.
Very interested to hear that you are looking toward capturing the regional market. As would be apparent from developments in the region, and I hope I'm not treading on too sensitive an area, but the other shareholder in TSTT has aggressively acquired quite substantial regional assets. Is that not correct? And how, therefore, does it fit with your regional strategy that you are, as it were, potentially going to compete with your shareholder? Is that something that I'm touching upon a correct perspective, or is that confidential challenge for the in-camera session?
Sorry, I do not want to get into discussion on the shareholdings in the public domain at this point.
All commercially sensitive matters we will treat in camera.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayers. Could I just end off by asking Mr. Walcott whether he would confirm that your regional strategies are going to be pursued with some degree of commercial aggression, given that you are focused on growing TSTT?
Yes, in fact, I think we can talk about our e-tender solution, which we're particularly proud of because it's a homegrown, to me, it's a TSTT developed product that we already have in the region, and we are making significant strides as making our e-tender solution the solution of choice for a number of organizations in the region. We also have some other initiatives that's already there. The short answer is yes, we will be pursuing our regional efforts with vigor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, there's a microphone.
Thank you. Brigadier?
Good morning again. My questions will be directed to the Ministry of Public Utilities, Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, and to NEL. TSTT is expected to adhere to the framework for its operations as outlined in the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual. My question, are you satisfied that TSTT is executing its strategic plan in accordance with the manual and in accordance with the future that you envision for it? They already, 2 years into their strategic plan, they say that it's going to 2021. What is the opinion of the various ministries in terms of the execution of this strategic plan?
Thank you, Member. TSTT's strategic plan was actually presented to the Minister and the Ministry earlier this year. Thus far, the Ministry is confident and comfortable that TSTT is making the strides that it is supposed to be making at this point in time. In terms of its reporting on its strategy and its operations, the Chair has regular conversations with the Minister in terms of any decisions that are being made. And TSTT's annual budget is presently with the ministry, as well as its audited financial statements for 2017-2018 have also been submitted to the ministry. So we are confident that TSTT is well on the way to the targets it has set, and we are pleased that TSTT is working along with the ministry to ensure that it complies with the prescriptives of the performance monitoring manual. One area remains outstanding, and that has to do with its administrative reports, but TSTT is presently working on those administrative reports to completion for the years 2009 to 2018.
Just to add, the audited financials for year-end March 2019 should be completed by June 30th.
Follow-on question to Nell. Their performance in terms of their strat plan.
I beg your pardon, you mean Nell's performance?
No,
TSTT's performance. Nell accounts for the results of TSTT on an equity basis. That is the approach we've taken thus far. Because of the significance of TSTT's results to Nell as its investment management company, and as well because of changes in the interpretation of international financial reporting standards, we have had to evaluate whether TSTT's financials should be consolidated with those of Nell. We have undertaken some discussions and research with our external auditors, as well as our advisors, PwC, and have considered proposals for the designation of National Enterprises Limited as an investment management company, which will allow us to not consolidate a subsidiary as is TSTT.
Is there a time frame for the completion of this exercise?
All of this we must do to meet the regulatory requirements by June 29th.
And again to the ministry, and what challenges do you see is the way forward, and how do you intend to assist TSTT in overcoming these challenges?
As I had stated earlier, Nell is the shareholder, the 51% shareholder of TSTT, and we monitor the company through the board minutes that Nell would provide to Investment Division, Ministry of Finance, and we have not had any issue thus far. As the chairman of Nell has indicated, Nell has written to Ministry of Finance on the issue of the Investment Management Company Limited, and that is, well, we are looking at it at the moment to determine whether, in fact, Nell can be considered an investment management company, whereby TSTT would be considered an investment. So that is attracting our attention at the moment.
And you are working to this same deadline of the 29th?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Leons.
Thank you. Just want to have a general question. Based on the procurement practices that would have been in the public domain with respect to purchasing of items, and some items that may have been purchased that are not used. A general question is, you would have sent us a procurement policy recently in the last package. Are there any breaches the procurement, of any recent procurement that would have occurred within your organization? And if yes, what are the reasons for them?
I can only speak from November 2017 to now, and the answer is no, no breaches as far as I'm aware.
Okay, thank you. I try not to go into too much details here, right? In terms of the products and brands or any technologies that would have been procured, what is the relationship with respect to, is there any relationship, odd relationship with respect to any service providers that would have breached procurement in terms of private relationships with persons involved in procurement and service providers?
Not as far as I'm aware.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Member Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I last asked a question, Mr. Chairman, it was on gravitas. I would like to ask through you if, through the chairman, if we can get the relevant records and documentation surrounding the arrangement between TSTT and this particular entity, if they can make that available to us in writing.
Yes, we should be able to provide that information to you.
Thank you. The other area I wanted to raise with your good self has to do with the whole issue of bonuses. I know that you're in a tight ship at TSTT. First of all, does TSTT pay bonuses? That's the first question I'd like to raise.
So, as it pertains to non-unionized employees, because that is where bonuses would apply, not to workers on the collective agreement.
Right.
Our normal policy is that annually, when we bring the annual operating plan, we would bring an associated short-term incentive program for approval by the board. That has not been done in the last couple of years in general. But it is part of our total compensation philosophy. And that philosophy is where we've moved away from just incremental increases in your base pay, which is what obtains generally with members in the collective agreement, which is why we end up in negotiations around that percentage increase. And we focus on your total compensation, and you get paid for performance, essentially.
Mr. Chairman, is there a bonus policy at TSTT?
There's no bonus policy per se.
So, can you share with this committee when was the last period that bonuses were paid to senior managers of staff, which, as was identified, they do not fall within the collective bargaining process? When was the last time bonuses were paid to senior executive management of TSTT?
My information is 2 years ago.
2 years ago. And what informed these payments? Is there a policy, or was it done in an ad hoc manner. Can you share with us what guides TSTT in the payments of these bonuses?
That would have been a little before my time. I'll ask Dr. Walker to answer that. I'll ask Dr.
All
Walker
right,
to
we can
respond.
deal with that.
The last bonus payment, and it's not for executive management. It is for all non-unionized employees, and I think we need to make that distinction. We're talking about over 350 employees. So, because there is a connotation around executive management and being a small pool,
Right.
the program was for non-unionized employees. What obtained at the last time we paid a couple of years ago, we would set ourselves performance targets, and payment of the short-term incentive program is predicated on us achieving the short-term targets that we would have established in the annual operating plan. That was not achieved, so the general short-term incentive program the board approved did not obtain. However, in an effort to reward persons who performed excellently during the year, we came to the board and said we would like to recognize those employees. The board approved a budget for that payment, circa $10 million, for that pool of 351 employees at the time. We undertook a very robust exercise, which would include the performance management undertaking that was articulated when Member Karim had asked the question. And we then determined who would have been at the top of that heap, because we wanted to only recognize excellence. The payment amounted to, I can't remember the number, but I think circa $6 million. And that is how that was done. That was the last bonus payment that we had.
And, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to ask whether the bonus policy or arrangement would be consistent with the stipulations in the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual. Is there any relationship between that document and what is executed when decisions are taken?
Wouldn't it? No, it's approved by the board.
Just approved by the board. All right, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to ask whether, through you to Mr. Myers, whether the company can provide to this committee the following documents. One, the strategic plan / business plan, the project.
The 2016 to 2021 plan is what you're speaking of?
Yes.
Okay.
The project, do you have something called a project management protocol document? Do you have a risk?
We have policies around project management. I don't know that there's a document.
Yeah. Well, could you provide that?
Yes, we can.
Mr. Chairman, Myers, that is, what about your risk management policy?
We now have that, yes.
Do you have a fraud policy, sir?
Yes, we do.
Do you have a whistleblower policy?
Yes, we do.
Can we have access to those documents?
Yes, sir.
Right. You made a very important statement earlier on in your opening. You talked about certain threats that can be posed to the very existence and continued viability of the company. Those would be subject to internal discussions? All right. All right, Mr. Chairman. Those are my...
So I'm going to allow Member Karim to ask a couple of questions, and then we will go into camera. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. With respect to the policies, the documents that you were asked about just recently, can you indicate whether there have been any breaches of the risk management, fraud, or whistleblower policies?
Not as far as I'm aware, no. And they are all audited.
What about in terms of the audit of the organization? Is it up to date?
It is up to date. The audit for the fiscal year ending April 2018 to March 2019 should be due by June 30th this year.
Since your tenure, have you, because I know you're answering questions only from your tenure in November 2017, have you noticed or has there anything been flagged from any of the audited statements under your tenure?
I'm not sure I'm understanding
Well, were there any concerns out of the audited statement or the management statement that would come out of audited statements? Were there any matters that were raised of concern?
There are matters raised which we would discuss.
Oh, in camera?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so what I'm proposing is, while we are still in the public space, I'm going to invite you to make your closing submissions, and then I will go into closed session. The journalists will leave, we will come off the air. Is that okay? So may I now invite closing comments from TSTT and then Nell and the relevant ministries.
I have a prepared closing statement other than to thank you for hearing us out, and we have no difficulties responding to all your queries.
Thank you.
Chair, just to clarify the position of National Enterprises Limited and our relationship with TSTT. Nell is the majority shareholder of TSTT, owning 51% of its issued shares. As an investment company in our investment management portfolio, we receive reports and financial statements as required under the Companies Act. We maintain a good relationship with the management of TSTT in providing information relevant to our own shareholders, and we seek to continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Ministry of Finance.
In closing, we just want to thank you for being here and hope our submissions were of assistance.
Ministry of Public Utilities.
Chairman, members, we want to thank you for the opportunity of being at this single evidence session. We at the Ministry of Public Utilities continue to engage with TSTT to ensure adherence to sectoral policy guidelines of government in respect of ICT infrastructure. Thank you.
And I would like to thank you, Chairman Myers, and various ministry representatives and all of you for your contributions today. Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank the viewers and members of the listening public. So I'm going to bring these proceedings to an end, and then we will start going to closed session. Thank you.